Hey everybody, it's Matthew here and welcome to this video. Now I know that the title is very controversial and I want you to actually watch this video with an open mind because I believe that what I'm going to be sharing in this video has the potential to help so many people because maybe you are actually a believer, you're going to church, you're being faithful, but you are still struggling financially. And it's not necessarily any fault of your own, except for the fact that you have been programmed to think a certain way. And I was actually also programmed to think a certain way. And because of that, now that I've actually learned, I want to actually share that with other people as well. So sit tight. And I know, like I said before, that this video is a little controversial, but I promise you, if you stick through it, there will actually be something that will help you. Now, a little bit about my background. I actually grew up in church and I saw a lot of different things. I saw, how things look from the kitchen area, how things look from a musician standpoint, how things look from being a pastor's aide. And one of the things that actually stuck out to me the most is that I saw that there were a lot of people that were going to church and they always looked like they had money. But then when you would actually go over to their houses, it seemed like they would be living in a little bit lower of a quality area and they would just be trying to make ends meet. They would be struggling to pay their light bill. Or if something like an emergency came up where they had to fix their car, then they would be down really bad. And even as I got older and I started to work, I ran into that situation as well where I was earning good income, but I was, tithing, I was doing those different things. But when it actually came to the point of me needing to have money for something that just randomly came up, I ended up not having that money. And what I've actually discovered is that there are many people who are going to church who actually are struggling financially. Like you're trusting God, you're believing in God, and you are looking for a financial breakthrough, or you're at least hoping that you could have more freedom financially. And that is actually what led me on the search to really ask, why is it that so many church goers are actually broke? I ended up coming up with three different things or three different ideas. And the first idea comes from Hosea chapter 4, starting at verse 6. And it's because a lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge. Now, you may be sitting there thinking like, Matthew, what exactly do you mean by lack of knowledge? Well, what I mean by lack of knowledge is the fact that many of you do not know, and I didn't know at one point, did not understand what finances were meant to be used for, and also didn't actually know how to properly utilize the finances. So you may be going and working a good job, or even, if you're able to work as an engineer, a doctor, or maybe you're working in retail as a manager, maybe you're doing whatever it is to bring in the income, and you have a lack of knowledge about how money actually works. You are not necessarily financially literate. And that's not to judge anybody or anything like that, because at one point I was not financially literate. And basically being financially literate is just understanding how money works. And if you do not understand how money works, what I have found that many people, especially churchgoers, end up doing is they go and they make this money, then they come to church and they give their tithe, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but they give their tithe and then they're hoping that God is going to take care of them. And what they haven't realized is if you want to have success in any area of your life, whether that's financially, whether that's in your marriage, whether that's on your job, you have to become knowledgeable about those specific areas so that you can start having some type of success. Now, the next thing is the tithe. That's number 2, the tithe. Now, what exactly is the tithe? Because this goes around a lot. And I know when I was younger, my mom always said, make sure you give your tithe. Basically, the tithe is giving 10% or giving a tenth of what it is that you are bringing in. So if you are actually earning $1,000, 10% of that will be $100. If you are giving $10, 10% of that would be $1. If you are going and let's say you have a fruit tree and you end up having, 10 apples. Well, if you have 10 apples, one of those apples, tithing that would actually be one of those apples. Now, the reason why tithing is important is because it is something that has been more so demanded by God to show honor to those that are actually teaching us about the Bible. Now, for many churches and for many things, I know a lot of people have seen the thing that happened with Marvin Sapp online, and that was horrible. And truth be told, there are many preachers that are exploiting the people in the church for their own financial gain. And because they are doing that, this is why people do not actually understand and why people actually don't want to tithe. Now, when it comes to tithing, if you have 10% that you're giving out of the 100% that you make, that means that you actually have 90% left. So because you have this 90% left, I believe that many church goers are actually broke because of the fact that they are tithing 10%, hoping that God is going to bless them, but they're mismanaging the 90%. And that goes back to a lack of knowledge. Just because you give your tithe doesn't mean that you can just go spend your 90% however you want to. And that was one thing that I had to learn. I had to learn that, look, if I definitely want to have financial success, what I have to do is I have to start managing this 90%. And even in Luke chapter 16, and I'll actually read it right here. In Luke chapter 16, verse 10, it says, "He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in least is unjust also in much." And what that means is, what unjust means is that if you are not a good steward of a little bit, if you are not a good steward of the current car that you have, if you are not a good steward of the current finances that you have, God cannot trust you with more. And because he can't trust you with more, he's not going to give you more. And many of us think that, we can just go earn more money. We can go get a second job. But how many of you have actually went and got another job and started earning other money? And what you have noticed is that you just continuously end up in the same situation. And it's because of lack of knowledge and you not properly managing this 90%. And when you are not properly managing the 90%, that's when you start, not being in a good place when emergencies come up. That's when you end up, not being able to take advantage of different opportunities that are coming your way. Now that is right there. That is really one of the most important things. Just because you are tithing does not mean that you deserve to be rich, because tithing alone is not going to make you rich. Being a good steward over this 90% is what's going to help you be rich. Now, we've covered a lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge, you don't understand finances, you're not able to be financially literate, and that is what causes so many churchgoers to actually be poor. Tithing, many people think that when they tithe that they actually have blessings that are going to be coming, and yes, God can bless that, but you also have to be a good steward over the 90%. Now, what is number 3? For number 3, you have to be aware. And you might be thinking like, Matthew, what do you mean I have to be aware? So for number 3, which really these should be in reverse order, but for number 3, you need to be aware of your current situation. You need to be aware of the fact that, okay, look, right now I'm not financially literate, and that's okay, because I'm going to take it one day at a time to become better each and every day. Right now, I am tithing, but I'm not managing this 90%. So I'm going to take a step forward and learn how to manage this 90%. You have to become aware. And once you start becoming aware and being responsible in these areas, that is what's going to allow for you to actually break out of being poor. Literally, I heard a pastor say this one time, and I thought that he was really full of himself. But he said that if you start reading the Bible for yourself, you will for sure get saved. And I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. But as I started to read the Bible for myself, I started to realize that God does not have a problem with his children having money. He doesn't have a problem with us being wealthy. He doesn't have a problem with us being rich. However, he does say that he does not want us to love money, because when you love money, that means that you would do any type of thing to be able to get the money. However, if you put God first and you start to have financial literacy and you start to manage this 90% and you start taking advantage of different opportunities to set your family up, now you are actually able to start getting those blessings. And that's what many people fail to realize. And I don't believe that there's anything wrong with churchgoers having money. However, you need to make sure that you are in a position where you are financially literate and making sure that you are managing the money that you have. So I hope that this video was helpful. If so, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and I will catch you in the next video.